France alone has around 10,000 castles. Germany has more than 20,000. Add up every castle, fortress, and fortified house across all of Europe, and the count runs into the tens of thousands. For comparison, in medieval Rus, on land many times larger than any single European country, almost no stone castles were ever built. So why is Europe literally covered in fortresses? Let's find out why Europe became a continent of castles. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, no strong centralized state emerged from its ruins. The empire fractured into hundreds, sometimes thousands of small holdings across the continent. What emerged is the system we call feudalism. A king granted land to noble vassals in exchange for military service. Those vassals granted land to lesser vassals of their own, and so on down the chain. Real local power ended up not with the king, but with a specific baron, count, or duke who ruled almost like an independent sovereign. And since every lord had his own army and his own ambitions, every lord also had a neighbor dreaming of seizing his land. A castle in such a system wasn't a luxury, it was a basic necessity. Without a fortress, a baron wouldn't have lasted a single season. This is exactly where the key difference with Rus lies. In Western Europe, a castle was almost always a private initiative. A lord built a fortification for himself because he was a small sovereign on his own land. In Rus, power moved the opposite way. It kept concentrating. And as Moscow grew stronger, privately owned stone fortresses belonging to the nobility became simply undesirable. A strong private stronghold was a potential seed of rebellion. So, instead of a network of feudal castles, Rus developed a different system. City fortresses and monastery outposts, answerable to the state rather than to any single family. The Moscow Kremlin isn't a lord's private home. It's the heart of central power. Isolated exceptions like Vyborg Castle are a legacy of the Swedish Order borderland era, not a nationwide practice. There's a second side to Europe's fragmentation. Its stone-building tradition didn't appear out of nowhere. Roads, quarries, and masonry skills survived from Roman times. And when a lord needed to hold ground for years rather than a single season, stone was simply the logical extension of what Europeans already knew how to build. The nature of warfare mattered too. In Europe, wars were usually fought against a neighbor living right next door, trying to grab a specific plot of land, a road, or a bridge. The kind of conflict that calls for a fixed foothold. In Rus, the main threat for a long time was fast, destructive raids from the steppe. And against a raid, the logic is completely different. You don't need a centuries-old citadel. You need to raise a defense quickly and survive the strike. Hence, wood instead of stone. It goes up far faster, and timber was available almost everywhere. Europe's fragmentation showed up most vividly in the lands of former West Francia. In 843, Charlemagne's grandsons split his empire into 3 parts under the Treaty of Verdun. The new crown was born weak. The Capetian kings, who took the throne in 987, truly controlled only a small domain around Paris and Orléans. Everything else belonged to the Duke of Normandy, the Duke of Aquitaine, the Count of Flanders, the Duke of Burgundy, and beneath each of them stood hundreds of lesser lords, each with his own castle. Formal vassals of the king, they in practice ruled as independent sovereigns. The same thing happened, in an even more extreme form, on the other side of the Rhine. The Holy Roman Empire officially united its territory under a single emperor, but in reality it had fractured into hundreds of nominally subordinate, practically independent electorates, bishoprics, counties, and free imperial cities. More than 300 of them by the late Middle Ages. This is exactly why castle density is so high along the Rhine. Dozens of minor German rulers each controlled their own stretch of the river and collected tolls from passing ships. And a castle perched on a rock above the water was the surest way to guarantee that toll got paid. No wonder the region ended up with twice as many fortresses as France. By the 15th century, artillery could penetrate even the thickest medieval walls, spread throughout Europe, and the era of castle fortresses gradually came to an end. But the buildings themselves didn't go away, they just changed their purpose. In the 16th century, a new type of castle began to be built in the Loire Valley. Not fortresses, but luxurious country residences. Chambord appeared with its famous double spiral staircase, followed by Chenonceau, Amboise, and dozens of other palaces. The military function, for which castles were originally built, disappeared irretrievably, along with the political fragmentation that gave rise to it. Today, a castle in Europe is no longer a fortress, but an architectural monument and a reminder of a bygone era when Europe was fragmented.